Hello, everyone. Well, today we are talking about the effect of vitamin B6, B9, B12 deficiency on cognitive functions and cardiac health with Dr. Yousef. Dr. Yousef is like holistic medicine all in one. I can't even begin to describe all his qualifications, but I will attempt. He is a naturopathic doctor, he's a PhD, he's a physical therapist, he's an acupuncturist, as well as a biomedical engineer and a faculty at Bastyr. Welcome, Dr. Yousef. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you, Amida. I'm really happy to be also here, and thank you for inviting me. And I'm excited to talk about this topic today.
All right, let's get started. I mean, most of us are not aware the deficiency of B6, B9, and B12, what it can do and hamper our health. So we'd really like to learn quite a bit more.
Thank you. Yeah, I hope I will give enough information today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about vitamin B6, B9, and B12. Most of people hear about that, and most of people maybe take supplement that have vitamin, B complex that include B6, B9, and B12. I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about how we get enough of those vitamins so we don't become deficient. And what about if we become deficient? What's the silent symptom? How we know that we are deficient, and what is the risk if we are deficient? And I'm also talking about how we can, what the sign and symptom is, and which kind of risk is for a specific type of people. It could be genetic, it could be other stuff that we are going to talk about that. And so both for cognitive function, but also for heart health. So this is the agenda for today I was preparing to talk about. I will start firstly with vitamin B6. So vitamin B6, normally all the vitamin Bs, the B6, B1, B2, B3, B9, and B12, all of them are water soluble. And why it's important to know it's water soluble? Because it will be easily soluble in water, but also it will easily, if we have enough or more than enough, it will easily get out of our body through the urination. So this is why it's important to know what is the nature of the vitamin. Because other vitamin that are fat soluble, we have more chance to have a reserve in our body because we can reserve that in the fat that we have in our body. But this type of vitamin, it gets easy off. Therefore, we have to keep the maintenance so we have enough of the vitamin continuously. This vitamin B6 specifically, is very important for normal brain development and keeping the nervous system and immune system in healthy. And particularly vitamin B6 in animal sources and fortified foods are and supplement that is specifically designed with fortified addition are generally better absorbed than vitamin B6 found in plant food, because we can also find vitamin B6 in plant food. But the vitamin B6 that comes from the animal resources is much more absorbable in our body. So that's the difference. So therefore, those people who eat more plant food, they need to be more aware of B6 supplementation. So this is why I'm mentioning here and why it's important. The body maintains vitamin B6 plasma in the plasma concentration, so we can check the plasma concentration by taking, blood samples and see what the level is, and therefore we can see if the person is deficient in vitamin B6 or not. So this vitamin is also absorbed in the gut, in the area where the name is jejunum or and ileum. And the reason that I'm mentioning this, because some people who have, well, I'm going to talk about that later on, but I'm just going to mention here, the reason I'm mentioning that these two area in the gut, because some people have kind of gut issues and their GI system is compromised. And therefore, they will be in risk of not observing vitamin B12, B6, and B9 through the gut. And I'm going to talk about that, how those vitamins will be observed in the gut later on. So the main type of vitamin B6 that we can find in natural way in our body, it calls PLP, and PLP stands for pyridoxal 5-phosphate. So whatever vitamin type we take in as a supplement, it will be converted to PLP. That's the nature one that in our body can observe and get benefit of. So that's what vitamin C. How we get vitamin C naturally? So by eating food, like whole grain products, nuts and seeds, sunflower seeds. These are just few examples. And in future, we can have a workshop that we can go more in detail in how we prepare those kind of normal, natural food. So we don't need to get supplementation because we can get that through the food. So in future, we can talk about that in details. But these are just examples like baked potatoes, avocado, lentils. These are all having very good amount of vitamin C, B6. So the vitamin B6 in the body is primarily involved in amino acids metabolism. It has role in biosynthesis of many important molecules, including neurotransmitter and histamine. And those two that I just mentioned, neurotransmitter and histamine, they have really important function both for our nerve systems, but also in our gut systems, and also important for our moods and cognitive function. So it's required that the conversion of the amino acids like B3, for example, it's also rely on vitamin B6. So B3 conversion, it's also required vitamin B3. So the release of glucose from glucagon to support energy production, and also modulation of steroid hormone receptors. So vitamin B6 has a function of all of these things. Vitamin B6 is critical for biosynthesis of food and blood cells, production and hemoglobin. So, and we know that blood cells production and hemoglobin, it has very much to do with anemia if it's not working completely functionally correctly and enough, and that's the risk of anemia. So what happened if somebody get vitamin B6 deficiency, and what's the complications? B6 deficiency can result in anemia, as I just mentioned, as well as sleepiness, fatigue, and many other complications like inflammation and of mouth and tongue. So some people who have very very high deficiency in vitamin B6, they can have very inflamed and tongue and mouth. So these are some of those complications. So chronic deficiency can lead to neurological problems, impaired immunity, hyper homocysteine, which is a risk factor for heart disease. I'm going to talk about that. This is for those people who has to be aware, those people who have to be aware about if they have a genetic issue. Vitamin B6 deficiency may present with seizure, mental status change, normocytic anemia, non-specific pruritic rashes like itching, and as I mentioned before, also depression has a very, very effect on depression, very important effect on depression. So vitamin B deficiency is usually coupled with deficiency in other vitamin B, like vitamin B9 and B12. And that's the reason that I wanted to talk about the three vitamin in the same topics. So how we know that we are deficient in vitamin B6? So these are some, I'm just mentioning some of the symptoms that's very important to be aware of, like for example, skin rashes. If somebody gets skin rashes just without any reason and suddenly cracked and sore lips, the lips is cracked and sore, or the tongue is glossy and sore, these are the symptoms. Mood change, for example, weakened immune function, tiredness and low energy, tingling and pain in hands and feet, seizures. And also, of course, it cannot, the person will not be aware without having blood tests. They will not be aware of homocysteine. Homocysteine will increase when one or more of those three vitamins I just mentioned is deficient in the body. Homocysteine increase, and that's a risk factor for heart disease and other issue. I'm going to talk about that later on. So how do we treat vitamin B6? For people, for example, like we know that based on research and also the clinical experiences, we know that people over 50 years old that can have vitamin B6 deficiency. So those people who have those people should be really aware of their vitamin B6 and B, especially in this case, B6 deficiency and level in the blood. But I want to say that always, and it's not only for this vitamin, but always talk with a healthcare professional, because anything out of the normal dosage, more than a dosage that is needed for the body, can give harm to the body than benefit. So it's very important to talk with a health professional so they can send a blood test and test it and see the level of vitamins and how much is needed, so they can instruct the patient how much is needed to get supplementation. So I wanted just to mention that as a caution here.
Okay.
So yeah.
Please go ahead.
So I wanted just to get in now to vitamin B9. Now we know vitamin B6, how much and how we can get vitamin B6. I want to talk about vitamin B9, but do you have any question
No, I
before I
think
get in vitamin
this
B9?
is very detailed, and I think a lot of us don't know the what it impact the deficiency of B6 can have on our health. So this is very useful for our viewers. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. As I said, I'm just trying to give an introduction, but later on we can have workshop on it and more detail. So I'm going to talk about vitamin B9 now, and how we know that vitamin is good for the body, how we can get enough of that, and so on and so forth. So vitamin B9, also known as folate, sometimes they say folate acid or folic acid, but this vitamin is naturally found, we can find that in food. So as I mentioned before, all vitamin Bs are water soluble. So vitamin B9 is also water soluble. That means that we can easily get rid of the vitamin if we have enough. And therefore we have to keep the body, the maintenance of those vitamin in body. So folic acid or folate, that sometimes they mention it. It's better absorbed in also again in the food that we like animal food. So 85% more absorption from animal foods than like plants foods, which is 50% absorption. So this is important to know. Therefore, we have to be aware of eating a whole food, not only one type food, but a variation of different type of food, so we can get enough of vitamins. So as a medication, folic acid is used to treat folic acid deficiency and certain type of anemia that is caused by folic acid deficiency. And it's very crucial for during early stage of pregnancy. So for those women who are deficient in vitamin B9, this is so important. They have to talk with their doctor and ask them to measure their vitamin B9. The reason is because one reason is because normally pregnant women, they have reduced folic acid in their body. And the reason is because they need a lot of energy to keep the fetus, live and healthy. And therefore they become very deficient. And therefore it's very important that they get vitamin B9 beside B6 and B12. Vitamin B9 is very important because the deficiency of vitamin B9, it will cause deficiency in brain and spine development of the fetus. So, for example, spina bifida or spina bifida, encephalopathy, and heart defect, these are just few examples of the defect that can be caused because of vitamin B9 deficiency. So these could be a risk that the fetus will not develop completely as it should be. So all of these defects happen in the first and during the first 28 days of pregnancy. And this is why I'm so emphasizing it. It's so important that the pregnant woman, as soon as they know or they have suspicion that they are pregnant, they have to talk with their doctor about vitamin B9. Ask them to check their vitamin B9 and make sure that they have enough and they are not deficient. So again, vitamin B9, which is folate, that's another name for vitamin B9, folate, is found in mainly in dark green leafy vegetables, beans and peas and nuts. In fruits rich in folate include oranges, lemons, and bananas, melons, and these are just few examples that I'm mentioning here. For a pregnant woman, it's recommended that a pregnant woman taking a daily prenatal vitamin B9, which is folate, also another name of it, starting 3 months before conception. This is why it's so important. I'm just emphasizing again, to ensure that the woman get enough of this essential vitamin B9, which is the folate acid or folate. And also those people who drinks alcohol, they are also very much in risk of vitamin B9 deficiency. So for those people, it's recommended to take 600 microgram folate daily. So sources of vitamin B9 or folate, as I mentioned, dark green leafy vegetables, turnips, greens, spinach, Roman lettuce, asparagus, Brussels, sprouts, broccoli, beans, peanuts. These are just few examples I just mentioned. There are more that we can talk about that in a workshop. So what's the vitamin 9's function in the body? So why it's so important? Vitamin 9 or vitamin or folate is very important because it's necessary for the synthesis of DNA and other genetic material. This is why it is so important. Vitamin 9 is important in red blood cells formation and also to keep the cells healthy and over the a period of time that they are circulating in the body. Vitamin B9 involved in protein metabolism. So, and there's a lot of protein in the body that it gets metabolized. For example, we have enzymes. These are proteins. These are insulins and other stuff that need to be metabolized in the body, and therefore vitamin B9 is important to for metabolization of those proteins. It's also important in the body to convert food into fuel. Like whatever we eat, vitamin B9 is one of those vitamins that help the body get break down so we can have more energy in the body. So they convert the food into energy. So we can use that energy to keep the body healthy and also all organs working and function in a way that it should be. Vitamin B9, as I mentioned before, it's very important during the period of rapid growth, such as the fetus and also the children, such as during pregnancy and fetal development. So it's very important. So what happened if we have deficient, and what's the complication of vitamin B9? Folate is rare found in wide range of food, and those conditions that I mentioned before, like alcoholism during the pregnancy, people who have intestinal surgeries like their digestive disorder, So the gut gets compromised, and therefore they cannot observe vitamin B6, B9. Vitamin B9 on those people who are drinking alcohol and they are alcoholism, they also tend to not observe vitamin B9 enough. Therefore, they have to keep their body supplemented by vitamin B9. As I mentioned, genetic variation, people who have genetic variation like mutation in, they call it MTHFR gene, and MTHFR stands for methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase. And this gene, if it's mutated, then they cannot observe vitamin B9 as normal as other people. And they have to have a methylated form of folate or vitamin B9. So if they just take vitamin B9 and is not methylated form, they cannot observe it. Therefore, they're important to know if they have that mutation. If they have that mutation, then they have to get methylated vitamin B9. And that's also for B12. I'm going to talk about that. That's so important. So some of those risks I had mentioned before, I will also emphasize that, like people who have Crohn's disease, celiac disease, kidney issue, some kind of cancers, those people, they are really in risk of vitamin B9 deficiency. Therefore, they have to be checked and talk with their doctor. People who also use some kind of medication, pharmaceutical medication, like phenytoin, trimotropin, methotrexate, and sulfasalazine. Those medications, just some examples that research showed that those medication make the body not efficient to observe vitamin B9. And therefore, it's important to check if they take those kind of medication, they have to talk with their patient, with the doctor, and get also vitamin B9, sufficient of vitamin B9. Some of the symptoms of vitamin B9, fainting, headache, pale skin, palpitation, loss of appetite, weight loss, gray hair. These are just a few examples I'm mentioning here of signs and symptoms of vitamin B9 deficiency. Anemia, as I mentioned, depression, also one of those signs and symptoms that has. So the way that we diagnose for vitamin B9 or folate deficiency, we take blood samples and send it to the lab, and the lab will check the value of vitamin B6, B12, and B9. But again, the reason that I'm mentioning again here, people have to talk with their doctor before they take any kind of supplement to make sure that they get enough of the supplement, not too much and not less. I mentioned before about MTHFR mutation, and that is not only cause that we cannot observe vitamin B9, B6, but also B12. Therefore, it's important to make sure and check that the person doesn't have MTHFR mutation. Now I'm going to talk about vitamin B12. Vitamin B12 is also known in different names. There are different types. Methylcobalamin, adenosine, cyanocobalamin. These are different types of vitamin B12 that people can get benefit of. And as I mentioned before, vitamin B12, like any other vitamin B, is water soluble, and it's also easy to we can get rid of the extra vitamins. So it's never the person doesn't give any kind of they call it toxic because of the extra vitamin. It's very rare, but you have to talk with a doctor before you take it. We take, how much. So vitamin B12 is naturally found in animal foods like fish, shellfish, meat, liver, eggs and milk and milk products. These are just a few examples I'm mentioning here. And again, vitamin B12 is much more or better observed through the animal resources than plant resources. So what is the function of vitamin B12? Why is it important? So vitamin B12 is important for protein metabolism, as it was vitamin B9. Vitamin B12 also plays an essential role in red blood cells formation and cells metabolism. It's also an essential vitamin for nerve function and maintenance of central nervous system. And it's also playing an essential role in production of DNA, like vitamin B6 and B9. So therefore, they are so connected. And as I mentioned before, in many cases, if a person has deficiency in one of those vitamins, it's a high probability that also have deficiency in the other two. Like if they have deficiency in B6, there is a high probability they also deficient in B12 and 9. And therefore, I'm talking about these three vitamins together. Sign and symptom and deficiency of deficiency and complication of vitamin B12 could be anemia, loss of balance, numbness and tingling in arms and legs, weakness, altered cognition function, dementia, early dementia. Many people with things, just start not remembering things and forgetting things. They have to check to see if they have those vitamins deficiency. It has also a very important role in heart and blood vessels disease. So if a person have vitamin B deficiency, they are also in risk of cardiovascular diseases. Normally, people aged more than 50 years old will be at a risk. People who are vegetarian, they are in risk of deficiency. People who have stomach and intestinal surgery, such as Crohn's disease, celiac disease, or any kind of surgery that they've done, they are also in risk. So these are just few examples of mentioning. People who have family history of the condition. If some people have family history of deficiency in vitamin B12, they will be also in risk. There is a risk that they would be also deficient. So these are only few examples I'm mentioning here. Pernicious anemia is also common cause of vitamin B12 deficiency. So pernicious anemia is an autoimmune condition that affect the GI system. So vitamin B12 combined with the protein called intrinsic factor. The reason I'm talking about gut now, because I want to make it really, I want to emphasize it. So for those people who have also gut issue, they have to be careful and check for those vitamins to see if they are deficient or not. Because there's an intrinsic factor in the gut that combined with vitamin B12 and make vitamin B12 more observable into the distal ileum and part of the gut. And if they have if their gut is compromised because of GI disease or any kind of surgeries, then the intrinsic factor is either not presented or it doesn't function that it should be. The most and very, I will say, not many practitioners check this problem that I'm going to talk about it now. This is why I'm going to emphasize it. MTHFR mutation. It's so prevalent, you know, it's so many people, they have it without they know it. And it's so important because those who have MTHFR mutation, they will for sure be deficient in vitamin B12, B6, and B9 because the body cannot methylate those vitamins that they get through the food. They get the vitamin through the food, but the body, because of that mutation, cannot methylate it to make it available for the body to observe and use it. And therefore, they will be deficient. So, and what is MTHFR? Now I have been talking about MTHFR so many times. I would say what's important? The most important MTHFR, MTHFR is a kind of gene that is responsible for an enzyme that is, as I mentioned, the short stands for methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase. And if that enzyme is not functioning, is not present because of the mutation, then the body cannot observe those vitamin B6, B9, and B12. And if they cannot observe those, if they are deficient of those vitamins, then homocysteine, which is an amino acid in the body, suddenly increase more than the normal level. And increasing homocysteine in the body, in the blood, that will cause hardness in this cardiac, in the circulation, you know, in the arteries and veins and coronary arteries. And therefore, homocysteine is coupled with MTHFR mutation. So people who have MTHFR mutation, they have a really high amount of homocysteine in their blood that is much more than normal level. That means that they are in risk of cardiovascular disease, different type of immune disease, autoimmune disease, and more than that. So I'm just mentioning few of those.
Okay. So
Some of
maybe,
those, yeah,
no,
I'm
I was
just,
saying,
yeah,
we're gonna wrap up now.
yes, I'm going to wrap up the whole things. So not getting enough vitamin B12, these are risk of hyperhomocysteine, which is the reason, this is consequence of MTHFR. One of those reasons is MTHFR mutation. So these are the risks. Deficiency in B12, B9, and B6. People who are smoker, they are in risk that they have more hyperhomocysteinemia in the homocysteine in the body. Use of vitamin B supplement that is not intended to get. For example, as I mentioned, if they have MTHFR mutation, they have to have B6, B12, and B9 methylated form, not the normal form, the methylated form. Therefore, if you get just vitamin B, which is not methylated, and you have MTHFR mutation, you will not get any benefit of that because the body cannot observe it. They cannot methylate it, body, and observe it. So by that, I will end my presentation, and I hope that I gave information enough so your audience and viewer can get benefit of those information.
I think it's amazing, incredible information that you've given, and which a lot of us as end users are not even aware of. You talked us, so went through the details of vitamin B6, B9, and B12, and also MTHFR, which we sort of know, but we really don't understand the dynamics of what it can do to our bodies, right? So this is what we are trying to propagate. We're trying to advocate on a daily basis, bringing experts like yourself to tell the end users, layman, so to speak, or not medical professionals, to understand enough about basics of their bodies.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, as I mentioned, like for example, those vitamin B12 and B6, they are involved in methylation of folate and methylation of tetrahydrofolate, and converting those to methionine that is used also for other purpose in the body. And also homocysteine is a kind of byproduct that is, it become so high in the body because of deficiency in vitamin B12. And one of the reasons could be MTHFR. Most of the people don't know they have that mutation. I would recommend that everybody should check for that mutation to see if they have MTHFR mutation. Because if they just go to the doctor and the doctor say, okay, you have vitamin B6, B9, and B12 deficiency, and they don't know what type of vitamin B12 and B9 they should have. Because as I mentioned, those who have MTHFR deficiency or MTHFR mutation, they have to have a methylated form of vitamin B9 and B12. Otherwise, they don't get benefit of as a just normal vitamin B9 on B6 like other people. People who don't have that mutation, that's okay to get any kind of vitamin B12 or vitamin B9. But those who have mutation, they have to have methylated form. Therefore, I mean, it's so important that people check for it, talk with their doctor, and let them send for a genetic test. It's very simple, it's easy, and it's not that expensive. They can check it to make sure. So I know I have had patients that suddenly they lost their cognitive function. I had people who were researchers, doctors, engineers. They're high educated people, but they were not aware of that. And suddenly they become less functional in their cognitive, and they start to forget things and not be able to concentrate and so on and so forth. And then I send them for what I do. The first thing I will send them for genetic tests to see if they have Mthfr mutation. If they have it, then I know how to treat them. Otherwise, if you just give them vitamin B of any kind, they will not get benefited.
Well, thank you so much. There's a lot of wealth of information today, and enough information for us to digest for the weekend. We are coming up with workshops with the Dr. Yousef as well, where we will present this information in more details. For now, everyone have a great weekend, and hope you can get yourself checked, as Dr. Yousef is recommending, for your vitamin B deficiencies as well as Mthfr. Thank you, and have a great weekend, everyone. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.